Welcome back to Everyday Adventures in Cooking with Rick. Today, again, I said in an earlier episode, I kind of said something like a garden series that we're doing, but I guess we'll continue in that theme with the summer garden series. Today we're going to can tomatoes for tomato sauce. Something I've been doing for years. I really only do a couple dozen jars for myself to have for special sauces that I want to make during the year. So, excuse me? So my wife is saying I have a stain on my shirt, but I'm not wearing good clothes because I'm probably going to get tomatoes all over me. Now she distracted me, but that's okay. And this is my special intense party rental shirt, tent rental shirt from a good friend of mine. But anyway, so thanks Mike for the shirt. Sorry it's dirty. Also, before we get started, we're still, it's now August 2020. It's been a tough year all around, and with the pandemic and everything that's happening. So two things I want to say about that is, first of all, it's been very tough getting canning supplies this year, jars, pickling things. Everybody seems to be taking advantage of being home and jarring and canning and pickling, which is fantastic. Just makes it a little more difficult to get things. But anyway, the other thing I want to say is, in this time, one of the things that my wife and I miss a lot, and I know a lot of people do, is going to see live music, going to concerts. We had been scheduled to travel to see some concerts. So I'm wearing my motet hat kind of as a support for all those small bands out there that have had to cancel all their live shows. And if there's any way you can think about supporting your local musicians in this time, I know they're really hurting. The Motet is a band that we really like, happen to be a couple of cousins of mine in there. But again, your local theater, your local museums, your local musicians, just go online and see if there's a way you can help them out. Just a little plug for that. But anyway, let's get back to tomatoes. So what I do, I'm getting your eye rolling. Hey.
Let's go. Chop, chop.
So I do grow my own tomatoes, but obviously I don't grow enough to do this. So I went out to the local farm this morning and I bought a bushel of beautiful plum tomatoes that they do. They only had one bushel of those ready. So they also had these canning tomatoes that we're going to use, so half and half with those. Now, again, I've been doing this for years, and what I used to do, and also, so all that goes into this is tomatoes and basil and a little bit of salt. That's it. You can add other stuff later when you open them up and you cook, but to jar them, that's all that goes in there. I'm going to use my KitchenAid mixer with my strainer attachment. This will take the seeds and the skin off. What I used to do when I first started doing this is I used to use my grandmother's old food mill, and I would cook the tomatoes first, put them in here, and have to, oh, I just scared the dog, sorry. I have to put the tomatoes in here and do this food mill. It was horrible. Imagine that's the way they used to do it. But now with my KitchenAid mixer, it's much easier. So, this is going to be kind of an all-day process, but I'm going to show you the first part now. But just another note, in the dishwasher right now, sanitizing are my jars. I use the dishwasher, put it on sanitize to get my jars ready. But let's get started with the tomatoes. So all I do here is you want to get rid of obviously the stem end of the tomato. So for the canning tomatoes, I cut them into quarters, and you can see with these canning tomatoes, look how much meat is in there.
Go lower.
Lower.
Yeah.
Not a lot of seed and juice, but a lot of meat. That's why these are canning tomatoes. But anyway, so I take these canning tomatoes, you can see in here, I just cut them in quarters, cut the stem end off. That goes into my bucket. That'll go into my compost pile. All right. Put that over here for now. So I cut that off, and then I have to make these small enough to fit into my KitchenAid food strainer. So again, just a rough chop, but I got to be able to get them in there. These are going to go in here for now. So we're going to do this for all our tomatoes. This is just something I like doing, and there's something about when you can your own tomatoes, the flavor is really something. I like to use it when I do my pizzas. We're going to do a pizza episode soon. And the sauce from these tomatoes on the pizza, when I do a nice Neapolitan pizza, again, now we've got our plum tomatoes, same thing. With the plums, mostly meat. So those go in there. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot here, so I'm going to be chopping for a long time with no help from anyone, just so you know. So I'm not going to chop them all here now. I'll just do a couple more, and then I'm going to show you with this KitchenAid mixer how it has really made my life a lot easier. Here we go. So now we've got our, this will be the last one I cut for now, just so we can get started. We've got our tomatoes cut up. And
You've had that KitchenAid for how many years?
that KitchenAid?
Yeah.
Oh, we've had that 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, and I talk about this in other episodes, how much I love that KitchenAid mixer. And eventually I'm going to go to the next, they have a new model, it's like a 7 something, it's a DC motor, super powerful, with a much bigger capacity. That'll be, in the future, I'll be going to that. But, so again, I told you before, it was this old-fashioned food mill. Now we're going to show you how this works. So, this is a combination of 2 attachments. This is the food, this is a meat grinder actually attachment, or a food grinder attachment. This piece here is the strainer attachment. You can use for fruits and vegetables to strain them. So what I do is you have to have 2 jars, 2 containers. One, the sauce goes into. The other one, the peels and the seeds go into. All right. And all you do, you may want to...
What?
You may want to... I'm going to take the camera off so you can see this better. Okay, we're back. I've now got the machine plugged in. Very important. Got that locked in. So now we're going to turn our mixer on. And then you're just going to start putting the tomatoes in the top. And force, I may have to cut this a little smaller next time, but force them in. And before, like I said, I would have to cook these first. And to be able to do this, whoops, don't worry about that. It takes a minute for the tomatoes to fill up the hopper, but as you can see now, we're starting to get some skins coming out and some juice going into the bowl. Now, that's why I didn't get dressed up for this episode. Sometimes I get a little squirt of tomatoes, so that's okay. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see in there, in the pot. Now you're just getting plain juice, and I don't know, can you see in the top here? Into that, right here, into this. So you can see where it's separating the skins from the juice. And in that short amount of time, you can see how much we've got here. And I'm going to re-squeeze that later to get every last bit of juice out. And you can see how much we have in there already. And I just started. All right. So, as you can see, I've got a lot of tomatoes to crush. So I'm going to be here for a while. I don't want to have you watch this whole thing. So I'm going to keep going with this, keep squeezing these tomatoes, and then we're going to come back and show you what to do next. Okay, so I have filled my first pot with sauce. Look at all the skins and the seeds it took off. This machine really does a great job. So as you can see, a couple things. I forgot to mention earlier, I did wash all the tomatoes ahead of time. Now normally I do this outside in the yard because it kind of makes a mess. It's raining outside today, so I'm doing it here in the house. But I did wash all the tomatoes in the sink. You can see here I have filled 1 full pot of sauce. Now, for me, I could eat this just the way it is right here. Look at that. We are going to cook this now to cook out some of that water, but you can see as I put the tomatoes in here and I kind of squeeze them as before I put them in the hopper, it gets some of that water out. But anyway, See, I filled the full pot. I'm going to get another pot to start filling, and I'm going to start this boiling. We just want to boil the, all right, let me get my thoughts together here. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of salt in here, that's all. I'm going to put some basil leaves in here, put it on the stove just to cook it down a little bit and get it hot. So when we put it in our jars, everything will be sanitized and sterilized. So let me finish squeezing some more tomatoes and we'll be back. So now all the tomatoes are done. They're all crushed, pureed, whatever you want to call them. No seeds, no skins. And I've got them now on the stove, coming to a boil. To each pot. Now you don't have to salt the tomatoes. It's not necessary for canning. I add a couple of teaspoons per pot just to bring out the flavor of the tomatoes a little bit, but definitely don't want to over salt it. And then I'm going to put a few sprigs of fresh basil in each pot to cook in there, get that basil flavor. I'm going to let these cook probably for about an hour or so. I need to cook them down to get as much more of the water out as I can. And then obviously you want it hot when you put them in your jars. So again, we're going to add just a couple of teaspoons of salt to each pot. Obviously when you're cooking with these tomatoes, you're going to add salt, pepper, garlic, whatever else you're adding in for whatever sauce you're making at the time. All right, and this is fresh basil I just picked from the garden, and it's been washed. And now we're just going to tear some off. Put a little bit, a few leaves in each pot to give it that flavor. If you could smell those tomatoes with this basil, it is unbelievable. We're going to stir that in, and like I said, we're going to let that cook down, then we're going to come back and put them into jars. I just wanted to say too, didn't really mention, but out of those 2 boxes of tomatoes, I got 3 big sauce pots plus 1 small one here. I'm going to jar as much as I can. I may not have enough jars. I had trouble finding them, at least the lids. This one here I'm not even cooking. This one I'm going to put into a Tupperware or a freezer bag and freeze it just the way it is. You could have this, I could drink this right now as tomato juice. Make some Bloody Marys out of it. It's fantastic. You could also just cook it for tomato soup. I mean, this is so good. But anyway, we'll be back in a little while. I could talk about this for a long time. You don't want to hear me, but I'll be back in a little while to put these in the jars. All right, welcome back. This is the final segment. So our tomatoes have been cooking now for a little over an hour. I don't know if you can see, but in the pan they've gone down about an inch. Not this front one, but in the back you can see. So that is the water boiling off of the sauce. So when you can your own tomatoes, it can be a little watery. Boil it for about an hour, you get some of the water out. Don't worry about it. When you after you jar them, later on when you go to use them, whatever sauce you're using, you can thicken it a little bit. Maybe you don't want it thicker. The flavor is just unbelievable though. So what do we do now? We've got our sauce all done. I have a big pot of boiling water, higher than the jars, because we have to set our jars in the boiling water so that we know they're canned well. All right, so that's boiling. Now I take some of the boiling water. I have my lids in here. Now the lids have a wax or some kind of stuff on them that makes the seal. So what you do is you pour boiling hot water over those, and that starts to loosen that up and makes for a better seal. So what I like to do when I do this is I'll take one of my pots of sauce. Now with my jar, I always put a couple fresh basil leaves in the jar first. Make sure you stir the sauce well, because as it's boiling, the solids may set at the bottom a little bit. You know, all these years, I kept saying I'm going to buy a funnel, a jar funnel, and I've never done it. So basically, I'm just going to pour the tomatoes right into the jar on top of the basil. I'm going to make a mess like I always do. But as you can see, I'm getting better. Now, I'm going to use a clean paper towel for this and just wipe off the top of that jar. And I'm going to take one of my lids out of the boiling water. Take your ring, tighten that up. Now I use my fancy jar grabber. We set that right into the hot water. And that's going to go in for about 5 to 10 minutes in boiling water. That sets the jar so that you know that will last a long time. Now I already have one in there. It's already been, and they make special pans for this and things, but this has always worked. So there it is. Fresh tomatoes like you've never had before. They're unbelievable. Now tonight, for dinner, we are having our sauce on fresh pasta. I've been asked to make meatballs, so maybe I'll do that. But I am going to taste a little, and I'm not going to lie to you, I've been tasting it all day. But so much better than anything you can get in a can, and even if you buy the best tomatoes, nothing like this. So, I want to thank you for watching. Remember your small bands, your local music, your local theaters and museums. They need your help right now more than ever. Again, a shout out to my favorite ones, the Motet. We've seen them live a number of times. If you pick your favorite band, look them up. Maybe they're doing something to help offset these losses from this pandemic. Again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click and like, subscribe, do all those things. Let me know if you do this, how it comes out, and really just enjoy. Until next time, we'll see you later.